Hello, Tom Maguire. I've not done a review from my car in quite some time, but I've got to today because the house is still not quite finished. My office is just an absolute mess. I can barely get in there for crap at the minute. But anyway, it's a review regardless of where it is. So I want to talk about the Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. Now, this is a really good book. I listened to it on Audible. But I got a hard copy for Christmas from my wife as well. I've listened to it quite a few times actually, because it's broken down into sort of bite-sized chapters. They're actually blog posts, to be fair. So, you know, if you follow John Green, you read his blog posts, and you've probably read most of these already, but they're really good in this book format. There's one or two in the audiobook that aren't in the hard copy as well, which I will mention in a little while. But basically it's just a really interesting, fascinating, slightly emotional book, I would say. And that's the sort of book that I like. There is kind of personal development type, not necessarily advice in there, but things for you to kind of think about and meditate on. And yeah, I would definitely say, you know, with this being a personal development channel, that this is a good one to read or to listen to for sure. So I'm not going to give too many kind of severe spoilers, but I will mention what some of the chapters or some of the blog posts are about without giving too much away. Here's the hard copy. That's what it looks like. So yeah, it's basically, like I say, it's broken down into the chapters of his blog post, which aren't that many pages long, which is good. Just to give you a few random examples here, we've got one on Halley's Comet, Diet Dr. Pepper, that's quite a good one. We've got Canada Geese, the internet, sunsets, Piggly Wiggly, if you've heard of that shop in, or that store in America. Auld Lang Syne, I really enjoyed that chapter. I'll talk about that in a little while. Bonneville Salt Flats, the Mountain Goats, which is a band that he absolutely loves that I'd never heard of before, but I really highly rate them now. I'm glad I've discovered them through this book. And there's quite a few more than that. Every chapter is only kind of a few pages. I'll just read quickly some of the praise on the back of the book, just for your information. So this, to be fair, actually what it says on the back here is it's praise for Turtles All the Way Down, which is one of his books, and also The Fault in Our Stars, and I've not read either of those books yet necessarily. But it just gives a couple of reviews. So John Green is one of the best writers alive. Damn near genius, a touching, often fiercely funny novel, Sunday Times. This is talking about The Fault in Our Stars. And Turtles All the Way Down, it says, so surprising and moving and true that I became completely unstrung. A tender story about learning to cope with the world feels out of control. To cope when the world feels out of control. So those are his other two books. But this, I think there's probably quite a few reviews of the Anthropocene Reviewed online. I genuinely haven't listened to a single one of them. I don't really bother listening to book reviews anymore particularly. I just read or listen to what it is that I'm reading or listening to, and I just give my opinion. I just talk about it, and sometimes I go off on a tangent like I am now and waffle on, but I just try to give my genuine honest opinion. I leave these reviews so that my kids can listen to them when they're older and sort of see some of the stuff that I enjoyed and why I enjoyed it. So yeah, my reviews are nothing if not, you know, completely 100% honest. It's just my opinion. So yeah, starting with Auld Lang Syne, which is a really good chapter, as I said a minute ago. So this is a song that we welcome in the new year, and we have done just recently. It's only the 20th of January today, so yeah, it wasn't long ago we were welcoming the new year in. I was sat at home with my wife, drinking a horrible, rough bottle of champagne, which I ended up pouring down the sink. It was that bad. But yeah, apparently we don't really know exactly when it was written, and it's been adapted so much over the years by different people. He says he talks about it being about drinking and remembering old friends, which I really liked. And for me, the new year can be both a really kind of inspiring, renewing sort of time, but it can also be very, very depressing as well, depending on your situation, depending on your mindset. I've been very fortunate to find New Year generally pretty good, but there are times when you get that sort of anticlimax type feeling and you sort of think, wow, what is it really all about? And he does talk a little bit about that sort of thing in the book. He talks a lot about depression and mental health, which is very interesting. Apparently in 1818, Beethoven had written a tune for it, or the tune to it, I think. I'm not sure if that was the main. I don't think that's necessarily exactly how it is now, potentially, but it may have been it's played in Japanese department stores when they're about to close, apparently. I've never been there. I'd love to go to Japan. And it's also the tune In a Wonderful Life, It's a Wonderful Life, which is a really good Christmas film, good black and white Christmas film. I saw that for the first time last year and really enjoyed it. And he says that we raise a glass to those who loved us into this moment and who aren't here anymore, and hope where they are, they raise a glass to us. And I really kind of like that sentiment, because I felt as though all the way through that he's a bit sort of cynical of life to a certain extent, although he shows its beauty and its kind of depressing side as well. But when he said stuff like that, it kind of gives you a little bit of hope. It kind of makes you think, oh, so maybe he does believe in potentially something else, something beyond what we have here. And I like that kind of touch to the book. It was popular during World War I and the truce of 1914, when 100,000 British and German met and shook hands and exchanged souvenirs and played football, which must be one of the most amazing things that's happened, really. You know, I think if you just sit and think about that for 5 or 10 minutes, it's quite astonishing, really, that story. And apparently someone reported that someone had a sing-song of Auld Lang Syne at the time as well. So I loved hearing that. He talks about three farmers on the way to a dance, which was a picture taken by a photographer called August Sander. He took a picture of three young men on their way to a country dance, and it's a really haunting image because it's just before they would have been going off to the front in World War One, and they were off to a dance. They're wearing their smart clothes, and he says something about their feet being in their mud, but their eyes kind of elevated to the skies, to the heavens, to the stars kind of thing, which reminded me of something Jordan Peterson was talking about the other day. If you Google Mary, stars and serpents, there's pictures of Mary or artwork of Mary with her feet stood on snakes, kind of looking up to the stars, and all the significance that has, which I won't necessarily go into right now. But it's a good metaphor. It's certainly a good metaphor for men in their 20s, I think, with their future ahead of them, but all, you know, yeah, unfortunately these guys' future wasn't so bright. But the picture, he says, is about knowing and not knowing. So you know you're on the way to a dance, you're excited about it, but you don't know you're on your way to war. And that's basically a bit of a reflection on life. You know, we can be feeling as though everything's fantastic, we're doing fine, but actually we have no idea what's around the corner. COVID, for example, no one had any idea that was coming, and all of a sudden that's there, and you can't see your family, and you're restricted, and for some people it's much worse than that. So things happen, you know, the present moment, kind of everything's about the present moment, and you don't really know what's around the corner. So that's quite frightening, quite a stark reminder. The Kwai U'u or Oo, which is a rare bird that became extinct in Hawaii, which for me that's a heartbreaking chapter, and actually that's the one chapter that isn't in the book, because I looked for it and thought I was going mad, but it's in the audiobook, and that's beautiful. It gives so that they were last heard, the Kwahioho was last heard in 1987 and last seen in 1985, and he plays a recording in the audiobook of it singing, and it's this beautiful song, and you can hear what is apparently the last bird, and it sings and it waits because it's waiting for a response from a potential mate or, you know, another bird of its type, and there's no response, and you can hear the gaps. And he talks about how, you know, when we've civilized places, we've brought in different diseases and different animals and insects and things, and caused things to go extinct. And it's a real heartbreaking chapter. I really I enjoyed it in a sort of slightly depressed, but I don't know, there's something about that, isn't it, that just, there's a sort of a romanticism to that kind of story, although that's probably the wrong way to put it. But it is very, very interesting. And, you know, the fact is we are responsible for all sorts of species becoming extinct, aren't we? So there's a certain reality check there, isn't there, as well? So, yeah, the way I see that, nature is both beautiful and horrifying and hard as well at the same time. And we always talk about Mother Nature and how we shouldn't be damaging Mother Nature and we should take care of her and blah, blah, blah. But actually there's the argument that Mother Nature is there to completely rip us to bits. And if it wasn't for our civilizing ability and our hard work and to an extent our greed and our human nature, then actually we would still be naked and cold and dying. In fact, we probably wouldn't be here, quite frankly. Talks about Dr. Pepper being his vice, and he sort of decides that actually he thinks we all need a certain vice, and I kind of agree with that. You can be as pure as possible. I gave up alcohol for 1.5 years, and, you know, I was doing really well with my fitness and my health, and I'm still doing pretty well now, to be fair. But you do almost feel in life as though you need something just to kind of just to give you that certain sense of guilt, and kind of, it's a self-destructive type thing, isn't it? We all feel we have to have a vice of some kind, I think. And I'm not saying I have zero vices whatsoever without alcohol. I think we all have quite a few vices, probably, if we're honest. But yeah, I think that's just an interesting one to think about and meditate on, really. Do we all want to be so clean living that we're kind of monk-like necessarily? Probably not. But yeah, so A really, really good book. I absolutely loved it. Really enjoyed it. Let me just quickly read a random piece and see what happened. Okay, I've literally just opened it on this page and it's the last bit there. Penguins of Madagascar is an exceptionally silly movie, but how else can we confront the absurdities of the Anthropocene? I stand by my provocative opinion and give the opening sequence of Penguins of Madagascar 4.5 stars. And he kind of does that at the end of each chapter. He rates out of 5 stars what he thinks of each thing. Really, really good book. Can't recommend it enough. I hope I haven't repeated too much of what's in other reviews, but like I say, I haven't heard any other reviews. I'm just giving my honest opinion. Please keep liking and subscribing, and I'll have another one for you soon. Cheers.